So it was 90 minutes of robust engagement here on ENCA last night. Dr. JJ Tabane's interview with former Chief Justice Mogoeng Mogoeng has been praised and condemned, but one thing's for sure, it's got us all talking. JJ joins me in studio now. You certainly know how to set the cat among the pigeons. You're all over social media. Some people praising you, some people criticizing you, some people praising Mogoeng and some people criticizing him. He's known for fairly controversial views on the vaccines and very outspoken about his faith, and he's already been chastised around what he said about Israel. What you were thinking you'd get out of the interview and what you got out of the interview, was it pretty much what you were expecting?
No, you never know what to expect on Path to Truth. You must always go there humble, you know. It was not a run-of-the-mill day at the office. Actually, I called him to celebrate him. He's been at the helm of our judiciary for 10 years, solid 10 years, and he did some quite remarkable things during his tenure. But this whole thing about his faith and so on, in fact, I agree with him. I don't think if you have a faith, you must pack it at home and then go to work and do the opposite of your faith. So in fact, I had a full-on rant last year or the year before last when this thing it came up and some journalists saying, oh, why is he praying in Parliament? I said, to hell with that, right? So in fact, I got a lot of time for him. But he seems to have come to war because in the time that he's been quiet, the media had him for breakfast and lunch, leading him to be chastised by the JSC and made to apologize. So he came there to really was very angry with the media. He kept on saying, you people. My brother was saying to me, if he had said you people to him for the third time, he would have lost it. But I kept my calm to say, some of the stuff that he says about the media are actually true. Because, for example, he says, you guys bring the same people to comment on all the time. And I think that generally we can't argue with that. But when he says, then you tell them how to think, that there I disagree with him. That's patently false. There may be people that you already know, maybe that may go a certain way, but they will be offended if they were to be believed that they are told how to think and so on. Certainly, Path to Truth we don't. We bring people from the extreme of a Carl Niehaus to an extreme of an Andilem Tikama. So I don't mind a controversy. But big takeaway was the vaccine thing. I actually spent 2 segments. 2 segments means almost half an hour on the vaccine thing because I was quite astonished. I knew that these ideas about vaccines, but I didn't think it was so extreme as for him to say this thing is killing people. And so it was just a little bit on the extreme side. Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, I want to play a little clip on what he said about vaccines. Take a listen.
This stigmatization of people who ask questions about vaccination must come to an end. 2, you people in the media must raise concerns about why some clips that do not align with the vaccination agenda disappear like this. Why isn't there a free flow of information? Why don't you bring people from 2 sides of the story to talk about the support for vaccination and the opposition to vaccination? And also, are these vaccines, by the way, past the trial stage? Because I think I once heard the Minister of Health saying, you know, they are at trial stage. Are they still at trial stage or past trial stage? So are you saying you are skeptical of, if you like, the forced consensus around vaccination? The Section 12(2)(c) of the Constitution is against forcing people to be vaccinated. Since when have people been forced to be vaccinated, by the way? Even when HIV and AIDS was raging, we were not forced to do anything. What is this about forcing people to be vaccinated? And 2, if 50% of the workforce is vaccinated, they must be protected, right? Why is an employee who is not vaccinated dangerous to those that are already protected? The whole thing doesn't make sense, and you people don't question it. If you are double vaccinated, why is it dangerous for you to be in contact with a person who is not vaccinated? You are protected. You are in a bulletproof vehicle. What is your problem? So if the country were to listen to you, you would say it must be a choice. Of course it must be a choice. Not that vaccination itself doesn't work. Because I just want to... I don't know if it works.
I don't know if it works. So, so here's the thing. On the one hand, you can say, well, yes, let's hear both sides of the story. But then the issue is that on the one side, we've got science. We've got an enormous amount of data. And
he dismissed that because I was saying to him, there is actually a ministerial advisory committee of these scientists you're talking about. Right? Secondly, I think it was an exaggeration to say we've never heard both sides of the story. At the beginning of every pandemic, not just this one, right? Scientists put their heads together. There will be extreme scientists. There will be those who are on the middle. There will be those on the extreme. But at some point, a World Health Organization, which is a family of nations, must say this is the way to go to defeat this pandemic. Remember the HIV story. Do you know how long we discussed whether HIV causes AIDS?
And what did that cost us?
300,000 lives later. Only then we said, oh, let's just get ARVs. Now, I don't think anybody wants us to go back there, right? Vaccination, unfortunately, at this point, it's the most sensible thing that's on the table.
And it works. The data shows
there is opposite views. I don't know what he's talking about that when these debates haven't happened. We have, throughout all these news channels, there are people who are skeptical.
I think it's about bringing on doctors who might not necessarily be epidemiologists, but who have an opinion.
Haven't you brought them on your show?
No, because for me, it's an issue around false equivalency. So for me, you know, if someone has if they're two competing views, but they're of equal standing, fair enough. But if we know that a lot of the views of another group are not proven, there is no proof. Why should we give them a platform? And I know it's a big debate in journalism, but from a public health perspective, why should we give them a platform? So
all I'm saying is, and I may disagree with you slightly, all I'm saying is there's a point in a pandemic where you are debating. At that point, where there was no finality, there was a time where there was no vaccine. Scientists were still debating, should we go this way, should we go Sisonke, should we go, AstraZeneca, whatever else, right? At that point, it would be unfair to simply go with one view, right? That is still itself being tested.
And also, the science was being discovered in real time. So, you know, and we are actually
But all I'm saying is once WHO has made a decision as to say this is where the world is going, right? That's where we now need to all rally. And people like him with influence would have to rally people to say, save lives this way.
Correct.
Because sometimes when people who are clever in their minds, right, sometimes lose the bigger picture. Remember Mbeki?
The Thabo Mbeki phenomenon.
Exactly.
Would you put it in the same category?
Reading on the internet, reading many books, talking to scientists, right? Fiddling while Rome was burning. That's literally what it is.
But it's interesting because there is a group of people who are distrustful of government, and we can understand why. That's a global phenomenon. And it seems to have found purchase in this anti-vaxxer movement. I mean, look at Novak Djokovic. He says, I'm not an anti-vaxxer. The reality is he's prepared to put his own career on the line. He will not have a vaccination. No one is being forced to take the vaccination. But, of course, it's going to make your life quite difficult if you don't do it.
But, in fact, that's still even a debate, if you think about it on a national scale. It's still a debate. It's still debated in Parliament, debated in the Coronavirus Council and so on. So he's right to say, let's vent all the views, right? But it doesn't mean that then I'm not allowed to believe what I think will work. And if I do, then suddenly I'm a villain and I'm swallowing, whatever is being given to us and so on by one side of scientists.
Absolutely. Let's have a listen to another clip on a slightly different issue where he speaks about there's this narrative, you've got to fall in line. Let's take a listen to that.
There seems to be a narrative. There seems to be an agenda. If you don't fall in line with their agenda, if you are either not known to be supportive of that agenda, or it is not suspected that you don't pose any threat to the agenda, well, then you can do anything.
So the criticism is selective, so to speak.
It is very selective. Remember how I was praised? Well, let me just give you an indication. I was condemned as this incompetent fellow who can't even write judgment. Somebody even wrote a book. A president who can read appoints a judge who can write. They said I couldn't write judgments. They were silenced by the Nkandla judgment in particular. You know what happened? They thought I was anti-Zuma. I'm not anti anybody. I was praised. I was a hero. Once they realized that this man doesn't support the agenda, whatever it is. This man doesn't behave the way we want people to behave. Oh, all hell broke loose. And it has never stopped ever since. So there are those that are pampered. Other people can criticize, they can say whatever, they will never be touched.
You know, he makes an interesting point, but we've also seen that cuts both ways. People who are pro-Zuma absolutely hate the judiciary when it goes against Zuma and love the judiciary when it goes in his favor.
In fact, this whole thing is about, interestingly enough, it's about the factionalism in the ANC, because the ANC is a broad church and the biggest party in the country, tends to divide business, divide civil society, divide churches. You know, you'll be shocked how many, you know, institutions of society are divided along the factional lines of the ANC. So the judiciary wouldn't be different. Even in the media, you can venture to say. But to generalize and say all media are pushing this agenda, otherwise it's all hell, actually it doesn't live up to scrutiny. You only have to look at, different types of investigative journalism. Investigative journalism at the Mail and Guardian and the one at Mapungani is different from the one at Carte Blanche to the one here, where journalists do it on a daily basis. I always have this thing when I invite people. I invited Minister Zulu, for example. Not now, when he had controversy, she's always in controversy, but the previous controversy, she says, no, you are not independent, I'll come to you when you are running your own TV show, because at the ENCA, you are not interested. So I say, no, actually, ENCA doesn't tell me what to do on my show. Literally.
Yeah.
I know it's a surprise, but it's a year and a half of not being told what to do, because that was why I agreed to come. Right? I'm not a journalist. I'm an opinion maker, and I said, can I say my opinion however I like it? They say yes. It would be different if I came here to apply for a job as a journalist. So sometimes I think there's sometimes a little bit of that confusion. The reality is South Africa, and I said this and he dismissed this, is rated as one of the highest countries for freedom of expression, where yes, there will be freedom of expression, but there will also be contest.
And he seems to be sort of suggesting there's an attack on freedom of expression, and it comes out in this vaccine issue, and it comes out in the way journalists report the news. But I think at the centre of it might be his faith, because as you're talking, I'm wondering, is he a man who prides himself on being a fully independent thinker, or is he a man who feels that he's truly guided by God? And in this clip, I think he's talking about how he believes it was preordained by God that he should be Chief Justice. Take a listen.
2004, Mafikeng Civic Center, a man from Pietermaritzburg who's still alive, Richard Gray, a prophet of God, called me out of the crowd and said, "Sir, what is the highest position in the judiciary?" After asking me what I do for a living, and I said, I'm a judge. I said, Chief Justice. He said, the Lord says, you are going to be Chief Justice of this country. And thereafter, there were several other confirmatory prophecies. So when I was nominated, I was emboldened by the knowing that the God I serve is the one who has pointed a finger at me to glorify his name through me. So my elevation to the position of Chief Justice is traceable to none other but God. Many lied, of course, and said I was a friend to President Zuma. I had met him only once, through the man who later betrayed me and said we were friends, when in fact it was at his request that I went to his village, Lomanyaning, to meet the man I never knew before for the first time, the second time being when Chief Justice Ngobo took me to his presidential palace for nomination. So I'm unapologetic about God because I'm nothing without him.
Fascinating. All told, 24 hours on, what have you learned about our former Chief Justice?
Look, I think he's a steadfast person in his faith, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And by the way, you could be independent and still be guided by your faith. It's not these are not mutually exclusive as such. It's about the value systems that you follow. I think he's been consistent. I think that's one takeaway. He's been 10 years consistent. The stuff that he's telling us about is when he was being interviewed to be Chief Justice, he said, God says this. Today he says, whatever I'm going to do next, I'm waiting on God. By the way, I've been asking him for an interview for the last 6 months. And he said, when the Lord releases me to come, I will come. And I was very patient. I said, let's wait on the Lord.
All right.
You know, and when he came yesterday, he said, the Lord released me, but if you allow Satan to come in, there'll be trouble.
I have to ask who you've got for tonight's show, because
there's a fellow called Lux Ntlandlamini. He's been championing this so-called Operation Dudula. But remember, this is a guy...
foreigners,
he's a guy who developed a human chain to stop people looting Maponya Mall.
I remember that story. He was phenomenal.
Yeah, so he's an interesting guy, but the big question is he a vigilante, or what are we doing? And if you look at what happened in Langa, is this what we're encouraging, that communities are now going to say, to hell with the police, we're going to do this ourselves? So I'm talking to him about that. There'll be somebody from the Diaspora Forum who represents about 300 foreign businesses who will debate with him tonight.
It's very interesting indeed, because it speaks to people are not just one thing. You're not just good or bad.
Absolutely.
You know, he did a remarkable thing around protecting that mall, but perhaps around foreigners could be more questionable. So I'm looking forward to that one. Sounds fascinating. Keep it up, JJ. Independent interviewing with no agenda. Thank you very much. That was Power to Truth host Dr. JJ Tabane, and of course, he is live on your screen this evening at 8 o'clock.